Pessimism is a term that emerges within a wider antisocial queer theory, which discloses the heterogeneous threads of queer theory that contemplate an antithetic position to normative and assimilationist endeavours, allowing for queerness as unruly, isolated and fading, thinking that allows for negativities. At its most pessimistic, it chants that queer is an articulation of that which is systematically comes out of subjectivity by the construction of the level of humanist subject, that queer is a subtraction. Other pessimism trajectory is widely regarded to become the American theorist of Sani and his writings as the victim grave and homos. 36% offers a sustained critique of gay and identitarian politics and a social focus on relationality, challenging the ease in which this politics is subsumed and sanitized by dominant institutions and power structures. I take this movement of reflexive critique of identitarian gay politics and culture from the Sani and in reorganizing relationality. The aim has significantly contributed to public pessimism, largely in his text for the future, and amongst other works, the theorist and literary critic. Significant thrust he presented for that take up is the elucidation of the understanding of the symbolic figure of the child that resides in the politics, and invariably shaping the logic of human intent to reproductive futurity, a forward-looking reproductive futurism. The child will always protect and reproduce, which ultimately serves to perpetuate the current social order. From the symbol of the child, Adam is able to see the social tone of queerness to reproductive futurism, such as rights to adopt or to openly participate in the military, as assimilationist and unlimited endeavours. His function to only perpetuate the current social order from which queers were excluded from. His final pessimistic project of just ways to refuse the insistence of hope itself as an affirmation, a refusal to disavow negativity and focus upon hope that could be organized within politics and culture towards a reproductive future. This is the core of subtraction to which I connect as thesis. Edwin further diagnoses the work of his outer joint, which I take to describe the tension between the increased replication and erosion of queer whites occurring in the West, against the arguably greatest ever visible representation of queerness in queer culture. This is the here and now, this outer joint feeling. Rather than using this thesis as a survey of the theoretical field of pessimism, I pull through central threads from within this trajectory as openings through which to pass and descend this thesis' body, engaging in thinking as in a unruly and undisciplined manner without moving towards resolution or conclusion, expressed through the dispersed and reflexive accumulation of writings and images. Alongside this, I wish to also enact a critique of the antisocial queer canon Sani and Abraham engage in order to elucidate their frameworks. Jack Armstrong knows that the Sani's work clearly situates itself in a very well-defined canon of gay male aesthetic production by George Name, Marcel Proust, and others. Enablement comes to the law of grammar, the law of logic, the law of abstraction, the law of analytical formalism, the law of genresism, effectively reproducing a communitarian aesthetic coherence. In order to refute this flattening, global communitarian coherence of the constituents of living activities, I opt to develop an alternate social, antisocial aesthetic archive from the case studies I engage. The loosely termed case studies describe events, artworks, poetics, autobiographical memories, images, and language itself. These case studies exist to occur at the margins of established gay canons that here pertain dominantly to Australia, to Aotearoa, New Zealand, the colonised country of the Pacific that I originally referred to as the Pakeha gay man. Aotearoa is a diverse world of indigenous queer histories and understandings of gender sexuality which are an integral part of Aotearoa's queer history. This is irrefutable. Pakeha is a term for white Muslims that's at our market and informs the perspective of these cases that I engage in a direct relationship with. This thesis operates with a central metaphor that the text is embodying, one that can be unruly, leaky, perverse, and named. This emerges out of the question of how to write in a negative, subtractive way. How can the words and text, gesture, and activity do that which it engages with? These questions exist in relation to the practice of queer performance artists, which informs the desire for the thesis to perform itself and sees the importance of multiple performed versions of this text. To approach this, I have used multiple voices of writing to create a sense of failure and inconsistency, all of which have been dispersed within the text body. These voices cover lists, first and second person perspective, poetics, aphorism, and autobiography. Working alongside the second voice, methodology mainly is taken to the language of words. Structurally, the text does this through page breaks, multiple faults, and repeated use of the cut-up technique in writing and making the text. Linguistically, the methodology mainly is active through simple techniques. These cover non-standard grammar, multiples of parentheses to break down the chains of meaning existing within a word, exposing the movement of meaning. The word as scam, repeated smashing together of words like enchantment. One last point of note is that I do not capitalize the term queer throughout the text, so to assist like in reviewing queer with the level of this subject. The document pages of the same division of shares of panels that make up the AIDS and war quiz that emerged from the AIDS crisis, a time period in the early 80s, continuing through to the 90s. There were more quilts and community-based art projects where each panel commemorates a life lost due to AIDS-related illness. Further, the pages are consumed by the text appears as instructed on the page, as gaps or holes in the ink to write the skin as a surface filled with holes, and words as wounds or scabs upon that skin. The physical properties are together by a simple iron nail to repeat a puncture of the text and maintain its reoriginality of physical form. The performed version uses the colour technique and completely rearranges the text again to the varying techniques of inconsistency, decay, and embodied, and the performative nature is expressed in multiple ways. It is important to note that there are many examples that could constitute case studies within this thesis and could form an alternative candidate such as Felix that emerged from an American and European view. However, I deliberately choose not to engage with these as a further refutation of flattening and marginal way excusing aesthetics. Cultural materials from Western Canada record onto the power layouts, however, they have canon because of great distance, which we, conjecture ourselves even as we are removed from it. We are able to understand who we are, what our history is, from these moments, and although they do remain relevant and might be now often catalyzed for political or social movements in our locale, they take up our rightful precedence over the local margin. I wish to erect an attack and refuse to constitute awareness and thinking and engagement solely through a lens that is already visible. So, read what it follows this head, that rearranges and falls back on itself, with forwards and backwards into every hole and sinew, footnote, line, or break. So, to do the task of conjuring families. Tombstones that shift, reappear, disappear, inconsistent, as your eyes blink and shift. The mighty nameless quilted panels, soft and comforting and erect and upright. They don't weigh down upon the earth and fix the body they mark into place. Row upon row, scattered lines shooting off in different directions. is an undoing of itself, unbound to drive to coherence and resolution. NZAF launched a new media campaign to combat what are called an undue optimism around HIV and AIDS. In place of the initial approach, in New Zealand, AIDS Foundation decided to advocate for a negative role model, which was embodied in a 25-year-old university student named Nathan Brown. Nathan Brown stands at the family home in front of his parents. Desire equals death. Silence equals death. This need to understand oneself and to hear a voice that reflects your experience is in no way a negative or destructive ideation. This is not what I wish to critique. What I wish to cast doubt upon is the way in which the art worlds tend to treat queer history with nostalgia and as a cultural material to be used. The recollection and dissemination of the AIDS crisis as a period of time is enacted to near exclusion of all else in cultural spaces and galleries. It lends a solemn seriousness to practitioners and to the careers, of which I cannot excuse myself from the culpability. Validity in capital, siphoning off cultural capital from the dead, building economic careers out of touting a relationship to them, and in this moment, the continued lived alive agency of those who experience this rupture is vanishing. They become unseen. A queer utopia is great in theory, but who is cleaning up the shit smeared all over the walls and the cum-stained tissues? Language erosion and shiftings. Puff, fag, gay, queer, dyke, tranny. I didn't even have the word gay. I sat down and said, "I'm a puff," said Baz in a conversation. Faggot is one of the few terms I have not embraced, though I understand it, and the insult because in 1970s Palmerston North it was not meant kindly, probably shaped me, as Dieter Ehrenbaum theorises, but I still don't like it. But I also get the recuperation of insult into something fraternal here, though that's my old school mascot show for you, says Lee Jensen, in a document as feedback notes to something I had written, my last correspondence with her. Vitally, AIDS and HIV is no longer a death sentence, so the diatribe goes, at least for an echelon of gay men with access to medical technologies, so it is dealt with. This is all that matters. Peter Wells' fuck moment. Peter Wells, the Gofter slog. In 1987, a disastrous television awards ceremony was held. The Gofters, Guild of Film and Television, was a live broadcast that beamed straight into the homes of Kiwi families, right into the central safety of the country's units. Disastrous production, stroke causing tip fits. No food, too much booze, and a foul-mouthed homo, the Gofter slog. The set design and costume for this television event, this once live spectacular that I look back upon as a digitized VHS recording. Those that land the stage in tinfoil spacemen suits walking through a tacky, tinfoil bedecked world that flashes horrible purples and blues. The broadcast ultimately caused seizures across Aotearoa. Where is Lee's archive? Where are the traces? Where is this exhibition? I recall so vividly his descriptions of this installation and its components and its owners. His fascination to the inherent queerness of scene, of messing with the intangibilities of the olfactory, the Victorian glass that curved elegantly, housing the once soft but rapidly decaying petals, the cracked and flaked skin that once sat on his body and gave him anguish. The traces of queerness, it seems, might be memories. Words once spoken, burrowed into my head. The investigation of queerness and its intangibilities in this exhibition of Reed Jensen's exist in the ever-decaying state of recalled conversation. My memories will die with me, perhaps even while my heart still beats. I am ripping open digital folders to memorialize. I couldn't gauge with Fiona Clark, visual activist, photographer, Aotearoa born who documented and continues to document queer life and far more beyond this for over 5 decades. Gutturally beautiful 1988 project Living with HIV that documented the lives of Sharon, Alistair, Grant and Peter in images, handwritten notes, scans, assembled into 4 volumes. One of the traces and memories of the AIDS crisis in Aotearoa that sees lives lived. Or I could engage with Clark's inclusion in the first major photographic survey of photography in Aotearoa, The Active Eye in 1975, and her display of 2 images from a series of 10 that see 2 trans women at a dance party at the Auckland University Cafe for Pride Week 1974. Arresting and jubilant, these black and white images with text scrawled around entitled Dance. The exhibition was shuttered in outrage at these 2 images. But I want to talk. Does my throat vibrate now? About Fiona Clark's 2025 exhibition, the other half of Annie Victoria Ryan at that commode gallery, Te Whanganui-Aotearoa. But why? Because my blood pumps and I cannot stop scratching my skin and scraping away at the tops of these infective wounds that never fully go away, always lurking within my skin. Conjuring is a transitive verb. It outlines a movement where something comes into view from an elsewhere unseen, perhaps felt. To conjure is to charge or entreat earnestly or solemnly. It is to summon by, or as if by invocation, to bring to mind, to make something appear, usually up. To make one think of something. It is a revealing and bringing forth, an actional gesture to bring something into view and pull it forth from within a darkness.
seconds into the clip, once a live broadcast, a voice rumbles from an unseen throat. Sexist shit! Sexist shit! Fuck off! Available for purchase. Deceased New York photographer Peter Huyo's sumptuous and melancholic photographs, Orgasmic Man 1 and Orgasmic Man 2 from 1969, printed upon sumptuous white cotton t-shirts produced by New York-based luxury fashion label Helmut Lang, once operated by designer and artist Helmut Lang. This wonderful item, produced out of Isabella Burley's tenure in 2017 as editor-in-residence, is part of the important series, the Artist Series, in which across 12 months, cult artworks by 12 artists were uncovered and recontextualized as limited edition posters, t-shirts and special products. Available for purchase, reproductions of a genius, groundbreaking photographer. Wear them on your body. Own the legacy. I'm dying to own and hold copies of Ghost Dance and Terra Incognita, to touch their pages, and read and reread them, deep repetition, deep difference. Then again, these books are so deeply important to me. Those books are lived memory traces held within their body. Time is fragmented within them, a linearity of life dispersed with. Douglas White lingers where he feels, elaborates a memory version of his life as piecemeal flashes, rearranging as he recalls, not to comprehensively articulate the lived life as towards a singular, futurist orientation. He writes of living as he is dying, and of the reflexive state of being always already dead with HIV. He writes of destruction, loss, failing and reclaiming health, the deep frustrations and impossibility of creative pursuits of Aotearoa, of the pitfalls of research, of the body. I want to cite them, quote from them, pore over them every day, because I know that they are connected to my text here. I know that Douglas approaches home with pessimism within their pages, and I know this from my decaying memory of having read them. The recollections and pieces of queer Aotearoa are a perpetual crisis and irrevocably explored within the traces of memory. I can only conjure and convene with Douglas and the recollections of words and images he put to page. I'm trying to find an artwork by a friend, Lee Jensen. He passed away a number of years ago. Designer, artist and educator. A gay man who taught the only queer theory paper at Massey University. I remember his love of queer theory, Derrida, Munoz, perfume and flowers. I remember him describing an installation he had done. 2 glass cloches set upon a table in a gallery, one filled with 7 petals of white lilies and white roses, the other filled with the accumulating flakes of skin from Lee's own body. This year, for December 1st, I attended the Edinburgh Sculpture Workshop for an event viewing screening procession. This was ticketed, staged in a quadratic partnership between Edinburgh Arts Festival, the UK AIDS Memorial Quilt Partnership, Edinburgh Sculpture Workshop, and David McLean of Bonavada. The viewing was of an edited interview done by the BBC coinciding, even triggering, the upcoming display of the quilt in Glasgow, with Ali Van Tieler, Nee Hume, founder of the UK AIDS Memorial Quilt, beginning the project in the late 80s after witnessing the American quilt in San Francisco, amongst many other remarkable components of his life. The viewing further extended to a portrait photograph of Ali and a single panel from the quilt. The screening pertained to the documentary There Is a Light That Never Goes Out from 1995. Here too, unseen via a screening occurring earlier in 2025 at the Tate Modern, alongside a display of the memorial quilt triggered by Charlie Porter's novel Nova Scotia House, whose subject is the public unveiling of the UK AIDS memorial quilt and reading of names of those who passed from AIDS-related illness at Hyde Park in June 1994, in which we see a young mustachioed owl. The worst sin in Aotearoa is to be up yourself, to insert or voice subjectivity in a public sphere, to be concerned with who you are and what you believe in. This is the greatest defilement. This is doubly enhanced when the voice proclaiming to be viewed as subject is doubly not. The queer Kiwi voice even more of an offence, to dare to think it deserves to be heard, and that the voice could even recall a valid subjectivity in the social. Peter Wells was an openly gay Pākehā man, openly making queer films. Present at the GOFTAs for the film Death in the Family, an AIDS narrative about the living, and Jules Dahl, a narrative about trans women living their lives, tea and biscuits in bed, starring future politician, Māori trans woman Georgina Bayer. The person to whom Wells directed his expletives was John Inman, the campus English actor invited to the awards and who refused to speak a lick about being a fag, yet was allowed to play the campest of camp heterosexual projectors on screen, stepping into visibility amongst the crisis and heated allegations for homosexual law reform. Wells, with a molten tongue, ruptured. This moment was a rupture with an Aotearoa, of acceptable, unacceptable. The tension between the homonormative orientation, of public innocence to be projected, and the angry homo slob. My body, and the other half for Annie Victoria Ride's body, did not stand and witness each other. My pulsing and gelatinous eye did not stare at the crusted eye image. My itching and burning hands did not run along the traumatically reassembled fabrics and quiver with the violence of wounds that do not heal to which they hold. O transitive verb, I do entreat against your limits. Ties, grapples, hooks, bipartite, hold tight. A list of my allies. A list of my allies in thought and sensation and meaning. A list of my allies through whom I wade. Douglas Wright, Peter Wells, Ron Takawa, Fiona Clark, Carmen, DJCS, Jimmy D, Cat Lang, with rotted guts and fat-covered fabric, skins and sounds and love. Manon Moret, she writes and she paints and we stare into. Jenny Haval, she lets me paint. Eve Guibert, Lee Jensen, Matilda Bernstein Sycamore. So why are faggots so afraid of faggots? Welby Ings, Wayne Kostenbaum, George Bataille, filth, Nietzsche, neurotics, base, blood. Yukio Mishima, he cuts me with his words and violent knives. C.A. Conrad, oh the somatic poet, Deleuze and Guattari, I contemplate you. It wildly sounds opaque. World AIDS Day is December 1st of every year, an international day of remembrance, designated as such from 1988 onwards, to raise awareness of the ongoing fight to eradicate the contraction of HIV globally, to mourn those who have died of AIDS-related illness. It is one of 11 global health campaigns undertaken and recognised by the World Health Organization to bond, galvanise communities in combined public strength. This is the strength and toughness, of astute resolve, of throbbing muscle, the sinews that hold us upright, of galvanised material, galvanised and bonded into solidarity, of puissance, the exerted effort towards an accomplishing potence endeavour, unite in this strength against a world in which persisting stigma of seropositivity exists and persists. Against, how closely princes against, is also to look at as an awareness-raising endeavour while duly channeling an act of public remembrance to the 35 million people who have died as a result of HIV and AIDS in the past 40 years. O transitive verb, I do esteem within your movements, replete, recursive liquor-shades, manifold, throat-bold. DJCS, Urban Legends, Installation View. The event was also to encompass a candlelight vigil at the end of the night. I attended this event, December 1st, with my partner Ian Van Tilo, Ali's husband of more than 30 years. Both of whom worked together on the UK Memorial Quilt, the event in Hyde Park, and the many educational actions undertaken with the quilt until they stepped back from its care in 95 and 96. Our attendance was to represent Ali, who could not make the event. Upon arrival, the interview was playing on loop, like a slideshow of cherished photographs at a funeral. The portrait photograph was to the left of the screen, a shadowy black and white chiaroscuro in tight close-up. Ali's countenance fills the frame, like the portrait a self-serious author would communicate their preeminence with, or, also, an image you would blow up and place alongside a coffin. The quilt panel was for a man named Derek, who passed away in 1994. We sat for some time with the interview on loop. A pause. The graveyard murmurs to me in a way that the cemetery does not. The graveyard begins as crudely, ill-defined, marked, temporary repository for the corpse's flesh to disassemble, after which the bones that remain were to be exhumed and transferred to an ossuary. The graveyard holds an impermanence and perpetual state of becoming and becoming. Its etymological connections hold to actions such as dig, to scratch, a term often saved for actions upon the skin, to scrape with spatial understandings of cave, tomb, ditch, with tomb. A word does not arrive at solidity. Solidity. A word is a perpetual process of becoming into meaning. If you scratch name, the top of the word on a page, a scab, a perpetual connective reflexive state becomes visible. The yard is also a garden with trees that cry. You are walking with your head in the clouds, or you are walking with your head in your ass, or you are walking with your head twisting the dirt. You walk, aimless, pointless. You began this peregrinative footfall elsewhere, and this elsewhere slips out of your tongue's grasp as you try to recall, taste, make somewhere it. A twisting wind sounds like dry, cracked skin rubbing against itself, or dirty fingernails scraping their way along a hairy thigh, which pushes back with sweat and white blood cells. An enclosing wall of trees rears upwards before you. Salt-blasted and sun-bleached, spires of deep green loll and strain, cypress trees, wider at their base and tapering softly to a point as they thrust upwards, a stray arm intermittently draping outwards from the body. This wall of trees with silvery sacked tiers encloses a graveyard. Their haptic branches extend into the yard, an embracing canopy for these mansions of the dead. With mournful, swaying looks, the cypress watches over. You feel grave, solemn, upon entering into this designated area. This entire event was a veritable funeral for Ali, a memorial of remembrance for a man who is not dead, a man who is very much alive, having lived over 2 decades since the unveiling in Hyde Park, continuing to live as an HIV-positive man. The black and white photo was as if a funeral image atop a coffin, and it sat mirrored in the quilt panel, a literal marker of someone who died in 1994. There were a number of others in the room, speaking of Ali's as they knew him closely, personally. Some did. Bob Orr of Lavender Menace Books, Queer Archive, and Raymond Rose of West and Wild, a queer bookstore and forerunner to the Lavender Menace Queer Books Archive, were present on the panel. Indelible collaborators, activists, and friends of Ali and Ian's. Others did not. This is something I've noticed individuals do at funerals and become frustrated and hurt by. Establish their connection, no matter how flimsy, distant, or non-existent. Demand presence by speaking fondly, warmly, attest to their strength and acquaintanceship, transform their threads into horses. A collective desire to enact remembrance firmly fixes the individual remembered into the past. In order to remember someone, they must be dead. The ritual of recollection requires a corpse. Rituals of remembrance are commonly enacted within the cultural sphere. I'm not interested in reflecting or engaging with the institution of archival space per se. I am beyond grateful that Aotearoa's library system exists, free and accessible, and that they deigned to acquire these books. I note this because of the difference in acquiring and borrowing, that these memories of an individual's self and experiences, even when written down, published, their dissemination will never be ongoing and will decay as these memories themselves do. These books will collect dust and rot slower than the body that held them first. If the books are digitized, then they are doomed to the eventual corruptions of decaying digital technologies. These books make me feel crushingly less alone. Fragments of the bodily archive, sprawling, X-rays, neurological scans, tight close close-up portraits, cold and glaring. To see the injury is to document it. The memory has document, the images document. To see, care and healing require representation of the injured. Evidenced by image, the photographer's freezing of rupture and perpetuating of it. Analogous to the ongoingness of injury, cumulative traumas that cannot heal over and be done. Nathan Brown does not strike me as a bug chaser, but I wonder where he is now. What is he doing? Has he managed to escape the clutches of HIV positivity that so lurk around him in his innocence? In 2004, he was 25. The negative positive role model, ego-stride his parents, their risky little boy forever on the cusp of contamination. In 2025, as I write this, Nathan Brown will be 46 years of age. Where are you, Nathan? Has your life lived up to its expectations? Have you continued to escape seropositivity, escaped becoming death? Have you married? Had a child of your own with a husband? Are you really, truly serophobic? You who sat straddling the chairs of the child in its elastic innocence and the fully narcissistic queer policing his health and bodily wellness at all costs. I can assume you lived with the chance to take oral pre-exposure prophylaxis when it became available in the general market. But I don't think you would ever be the type to disco dose, and absolutely wouldn't be the type to engage in needle full of antiretrovirals every 2 months. Because that would mean a break in your skin. You'd willingly have to let someone penetrate you and have to witness that needle be cast away in a sharp disposal box. Your body so dangerous things that come into contact with must be burned, and it wouldn't do. Uni student who doesn't have HIV. Or maybe, after such a bold public declaration of your fear, your everyday committed action against contracting HIV, against being transformed, contaminated, positive, this lifelong campaign to remain pure for your parents, for your Kiwi values, you realised you found yourself in a mirror. Perhaps it became so overpoweringly apparent that these disavowals of bliss and your bodily purity was but a reflection to what you desire. The glinting needle points of light reflect on the edges of your peripheral vision, gradually becoming too blindingly bright to ignore the apperception of you. Nathan Brown has become through a deep perception and desire of the other, of the seropositive man, the you in the mirror, full and ugly, a bug chaser. Perhaps you spent your nights dreaming of infective states. Maybe it's simpler. Maybe you dreamed of cum and skin and raw holes and raw cogs. Bug chaser? Cum slut? We watched There Is a Light That Never Goes Out. A panel discussion, mostly about nothing. There was adverse weather, a whipping wind and penetrating rain on a dark and cold evening that would not abate. So, a standing vigil with burning garden torches under a cover in the rain. The glass cloche is transparent, yet utterly severing of the heavily scented materials within and their ability to seep into the room. These substances the eye knows are pungent, hair removed from living bodies and rendered olfactorily inert. These flowers, luxurious and delicate, that through destruction and their death are transformed into ephemeral adornments. The process of extracting their scented essence destroys. Skin that itches, burns, screams to be clawed. Skin, the organ that marks out edges, that is prone to blister, rot, becoming fungal, to crack and to bleed. Always absorbing and extruding and always unruly. But I cannot cannot find this artwork. I cannot find writing or images of it. I'm sifting through any mention of allegiance online. I'm sifting through memorial blog posts and brief memorandums. These are the traces that seem to be online. I scroll and sift through memories, acknowledgements of his passing. O transitive verb, I do expound your ever-leaping, fecund, flux, finery, oscillate, shift-gate. Connections between queerness and death. Connection cannot be the best piece of language. It's not just a connection, a cable between two fixed points with queer on the one end and death on the other and a landline between the two. It's better to think of them as a recursive, reflexive relationship. They are points embroiled within each other perpetually. To think of embroiled as a verb. The queer is not just connected to death, not just cathected. The two are inseparably enmeshed. Two flowing states ever emergent that protrude into and from within, that emerge from the middle of the other. Multi-directional flows protruding through the many othered, the centre unfixed, swarms. Perhaps even better, they fuck and are fucked by each other. Both are machines producing meaning in their eternal interpluggedness. They depend on each other for meaning to occur. They happen as a process. In outside all, there is no site that is easily analogous to the ideals presented of the American or European bathhouse, no ideal space of democratic relation. In outside all, we have a longer history of the public toilet, of the bog queen, as a spatial location for same-sex encounters, being traced back to at least the mid-19th century, continued well into the 21st. The bog queen even had her own language, bog speak. This event slashed a coherent sociality, became a complete and utter scandal because it was a queer voice that rang out. Not a camp voice, a queer voice. The leaping out of a non-subject that confesses deviance away from masculine ideals of self-control. This is a scandal because the voice is a threat. The discomfort and need for control over voices of aberrance, of monstrosity, that leak out and cannot control themselves, infers an understanding of the interactions of the voice, its relational process. To hear the queer voice, one might become contaminated and queered because of this interaction. Women, catamites, eunuchs and androgynes fall to this category. Their sounds are bad to hear and make men uncomfortable. This fuck off is a way in to the constitutive absences of the outside of queerness. The moments of subtraction and the voiding of notions of goodness, the doing, gestures of pessimism, that occur outside of the mapped locations that constitute queer cultural history. This is a rupture. I fell into the memory of illness in my country. Fuck off as a way in. However, AIDS and HIV persists. It continues in becoming. There is no arrival point or clean markation that leaves it within the past. Not every person who contracted and contracts AIDS or HIV has died, will die. These people are still here, very much alive, living every day, week and year. AIDS and HIV remains affecting millions of people. It is vital to note that a central tenet of AIDS activism is concerned with the flattening of individuals, their lives, experiences and contexts into numbers, into data, thereby extinguishing their humanity further. To rely on statistics as a justification of engaging with this topic spits in the face of this activism. Grave, from the Old English grave. Grave, ditch, trench, cave. From Proto-Germanic, grafa, graba. Source also Old Saxon graf, Old Frisian gref, Old High German grab. Grave, tomb. Old Norse grof, cave. Gothic graba, ditch. To cognate with Old Church Slavonic grubu, grave, tomb. And perhaps from a Pi root grebe, to dig, to scratch, to scrape, and related to the Old English grafen, to dig. Yard, from Middle English yerd, from Old English geared, fenced enclosure, garden, court, residence, house, from Proto-Germanic gardan, a word of uncertain origin. Perhaps gore too, suffix from the root ger, to grasp, enclose, with derivatives meaning enclosure. What I wish to connect or add is that in the current epoch named queer culture that I live in, and the ways in which we interact or engage with HIV and those who are or have been seropositive, is through a breakage where those individuals cannot remain to be seen as alive still. In order to neutralize the threat that a life still lived in death poses, we transform these individuals into a symbolic tragic child. The symbol bears no relation to any living, actualized subject. It does not refer to any one life. Reckon with the political without subtending to the tyranny of futurity. It becomes our responsibility to live a full, productive life as an active memorial and remembrance of those tragic men who were cut short. The goal is respectability to shift into the productive mode. It is less respectable to be HIV positive and still have a life. The next day, the hunt began across the newspapers and media of Aotearoa. Days later, the hunt succeeded. The Gofta slob exposed. The man who shocked the nation. We name the Gofta TV slob. To acknowledge, as a gallery or a group or shop or body, the passing of another who you interacted with. To mention what you did with them. Digital mourning. I must stake my claim in this moment of memory. When Cole Hampton passed away, a friend, I found out the day after while on a lunch break. What brought this death into my view was a photographer's post on the professional studio account on Facebook. The post was a series of images they had taken of Cole in a recently opened studio. The images, shots of Cole's drag persona Pamela Hancock. This post was an advertisement and memorial. Cole's death an opportunity to place into view the photographer's relationship to the deceased and advertised their studio, their services as a queen photographer, a branding and dissemination. It made me sick and furious. This flashpoint of visibility, to connect oneself into the public memorandum of another and stake a transitive verb, I now do magnify away or ice-cold, emergent, energy, effacious, duplex body vexed. Of resilience, gritted fortitudousness and persistent obduracy, pluck like a child. Of diversity, the heterogeneous afflicted. To acknowledge and recognize, also to look at, these beautified qualities of those living with HIV, towards an ongoing fight, the eternal fight, with illness that may stand in the way of livability. At times, these public community exercises of memorial and dialogue are the purview of the worlds of art and culture. This year, 2025, is the first year the United States of American government has not participated in this day, has not marked it. The fight is over, no longer eternal. Let's get the party started. We have arrived. An introduction to Ali from someone who knew him earlier that day, describing this event as a tribute to him. Ali didn't speak for himself, unable to leave the house to attend. I am unsure why one would stage an event for someone and not invite them to speak, to not make reasonable access to allow them to do so. It would have been so simple to engage Ali in this event, or to invite Ian, his husband of more than 30 years, who is one of the many people responsible for the quilt, who was with Ali for its majority. Neither of which happened. It was preferable to speak of Ali as a ghost, opting to portray him as a memory. The list, it tranquilizes me. It thinks in terms of like bodies, to stack ideas and phrases within each other, to reveal a body and then slash at it, relishing in the incongruities between members of the list, to revel in the friction, thorough and inconsequential, it holds heterogeneity within itself, and the list contains spaces between names, that which is listed, the space congealing holes. It evades a doctrinaire thinking progress. The list is an act of private collection. Greatness has often been seen to happen in private collecting. To stack ideas and words and phrases within each other and reveal a corpus that connects them. A list is a stack in terms of like bodies, the subject-object private public. The fanatic makes lists. They represent an ever-changing hierarchy. This is my new favourite, overtaking another. No, this one, inconsistent. Names slashed and crossed off the page, sympathetically re-added. The list is hacked and scratched and scribbled, always additive, always subtractive. A list is forever incomplete. In perpetuity, it persists. The action of accumulating, contemplation, the self-emergent, and lists of likenesses, of murmurs and understandings. There is no need for the list to be coherent and in agreement with itself. Each listed word can disagree with another, be in conflict, and conflict is able to be held together in the body of the page of the list. They may disagree, but they are thinking of things that plague me. The cruise club, or the bathhouse, is a perceived space of homosocial and sexual engagement. In historiography and academia, these spaces are often rendered an ideal revolutionary space, described, cherished, as a sort of Whitman-esque democracy and an embodiment of a desire to know and trust other men and a type of brotherhood far removed from the male bondage of rank, hierarchy, and competition that characterize much of the outside world. These spaces have been described as sites that appear to be the ideal site for physical a break from and disavowal of AIDS and HIV, a break in its ongoingness perpetrated by emergent homonormativities. The adults have arrived, and they must rebuild the broken gay world, produce a safe way of living happy, healthy lives, and do so fondly at a distance, looking at images of you, of all we've lost, tragic innocence, and reminding ourselves of the future that you never received, that we have a responsibility to enact. Tragic man, so beautiful, young, and full of productive potential. Emile Cioran, who tells me my aphorisms and holds the pessimism of life. Si Haikashotten, I wish I had time to really bring you forward. Thank you for your queer terror, and I hope I do not disservice you. Ron Affey, Ivan Lupi, performance does not make me alone. What is the language, the words to say this, that queerness and death are co-present within each other? Can a word be found, resurrected to say this? And what is the desire to find a singular word to express this, to fix it and be done with it? What of the desire for clarity and erudite analysis? To shoot it dead, to taxonomize, to edify? As your eye scrapes over the yard, it catches upon a small rubbish bin astride a tombstone. It is lined with a cheap, leftover plastic bag from one supermarket or another, a place for waste. Your eye claws to find that. In fact, there is a bin astride every tombstone in this yard. These bins are perpetually filling over with detritus, as if being filled outwards from the inside. You witness the waste accumulating over and over again. It climbs towards the edges, the lips of the bin, and the second the waste materials begin to spill out onto the grass, the bin empties, seemingly in the brief microsecond you blink, only to begin filling again. There must be an unseen cleaner labouring over the waste bin removal, a cleaner who moves only in the seconds your vision retreats behind the eyelids or slinks in to clean under the blind eye of your shoulder. The materials in the bins are remnants of consumption. Tea bags, noodle wrappings, fat soaked paper bags, sugar sachets, damp Wet-Ex, cigarette butts, bottle caps, used condoms, lube sachets, dental dams, white bottles in which you can faintly make out the words tenofovir, tissues scrunched into sculptural forms by effluvia, small plastic baggies, blister packs, blue pills, an SD card, matted balls of hair. The bins are receiving and filling from the inside with consumptive traces. Detritus. Consumption leaves traces, and those traces are not just ephemeral existences of potentiality, high, low, cultural materials, memories of democratic relationality, of life lived outside. Sometimes the traces that we leave behind are just trash and rubbish, the shit that we leave for someone else to clean in order to hold our ideals up. A base material. These are descriptions of a past at a distance that we have a nostalgia for. Nostalgia depends on distance. Nostalgia haunts us. We as queer people come to understand ourselves often in a nostalgia, perceived flash and show and none of the misgivings, the complexities. These descriptions and investigations are concerned with the locale, the gay meccas of San Francisco or New York or London or Sydney. Yet there, over the seas, the era of the bathhouse has ended. It has finished. The queer utopia cannot be divorced from a necessary labour of servitude. This is the base material which the futures of utopia lord above. I see these works at a distance. I reflect to the place I have left. I have in distance cut myself away from the place that I emerged from. Deliberately, I did this. Closed the chasmous gap between. To my knowledge, I'm the only fag within my family, and no other hearth in which to resonate. How does AIDS literature continue? And why does it feel that it now exists as either nostalgia-driven historical fiction, Nova Scotia House, or nostalgic social study, Why We Went Out? The critical, conceptual, social reorganising of understanding that was presented by the AIDS crisis Urban Legends 2022 is a series of 14 photographic prints pasted to a gallery wall by DJ CES, an Aotearoa-based artist, gallerist and curator. These photographs depict repeating rubbish bins lined with cheap plastic bags and filled with detritus. Within these photographs, a hard flash illuminates directly downwards, the camera in an extreme overhead exposing those gaping bins and the blackened concrete floor on which they rest. The lens leers, it lords above the exposed bin rim mouth hole. The rubbish that they hold, that they contain, the eye makes out as tea bags, noodle wrappings, fat soap paper bags, sugar sachets, damp latex, cigarette butts, bottle caps, used condoms, lube sachets, tissues, small plastic baggies, blister packs. Nathan Brown, Bug Chaser, Gumstop. The invisible centre in all of your campaign is the HIV positive body and the you that desires it. O transitive verb, I shall exalt my vibrating delight, doting, dicking, droning, assiduous, whole-kissed. Many of our undergraduates have never known, and perhaps will never know, sex without latex. I have used condoms and intercourse perhaps twice in my fuck-filled life. I am covered in the band-aid of PrEP. Majority of my gay and trans circles who fuck on PrEP. Everyone's on PrEP, at least those in the urbanities of the West. And now we fuck with a band-aid, without latex. That moment has arrived. The resurgence of risk-taking sexual practice. Is PrEP permission? What arrives is not sex as producing community and redemptive reconstructions, but sex as destructive, disinterested in others, anti-communitarian and undoing. I live now in zero discordancy. balance? My partner is HIV positive and I am not. Contradiction is just too difficult, so a sealant is laid out at its edges. Seal it away into the past. Lock that baby up. The other half, a face, a body mangled, images that document the body's failure, decay, suffering and healing, violence and care, a body that is bruised, slashed, broken, wounded flesh necrotizing and healing and degrading and reforming, seen in images of puce and cream, with an eye exposed, the whites of crusted crude oil, rough Hessian sacks pulled apart at the weft and weave, that fall apart but never reach a state of total decay, never arriving at corpsehood. The flashpoint of visibility, to connect oneself into the public memorandum of another and stake a claim on their life and death. Cole Hampton was an incredible drag performer, writer and jazz singer. I miss them phenomenally and I regret failing as a friend every day. I watched this rupture through recordings of the event on the Ngā Taonga Sound and Image Archive website. I'm trying to watch, but the servers aren't big enough. A fraction loads, streams, and then pauses, stops flat, and I wait for the buffer. I watch a document from history in fractions, broken dialogues through a digital interface. The connection is slow. The Ngā Taonga archive breaks the flow of the image document apart. The image document is a sustained line from beginning to end. It breaks and must load more, recall more from a glitching database on the other side of the world. Each time I watch it back, I see different fragments. It is for the award Best Entertainment that we hear the rupturing of an angered homo. The top 12 has achieved this award. The iconic lesbian drag king duo who acceptably enchant the heterosexual population, those beloved lesbos. Their mother accepts their award. Immediately following, we see comedian Billy T. James eating sheep shit. Sheep shaggers and poo bushes. There is an unplanned irony. Holds within it always action, movement, gesture. So the state of conjured cannot come to mean a fixed state, as the lull and pull from whence it came cannot be relinquished. Its movements and actions are inseparable, are heterogeneous. Droning is a verb, conjuring is a verb, subtracting is a verb. The transitive that holds many subjects and many objects and alides through them all. I'm not here to explain to you, I'm here to do through you, through your eyes gliding over the page. Remnants of consumption, the consuming of others, of desire, They consume your food, tea, drugs, sustenance and intoxication. Consumption leaves traces, and those traces aren't just ephemeral existences of potentiality. They have to be cleaned and picked up by somebody. The somebody who cleans and labours is DJCS, who worked for 5 years at a sex on-premises venue, a cruise club, named Basement Specialist Adult Store and Cruise Club, just off of Karangahapé Road in Tamanakura. The documenter, image maker, is DJCS. Basement Specialist Adult Store and Cruise Club is one of the few remaining gay sex on-premises venues within Aotearoa. It is not a sauna/bathhouse. Important difference. Checkmate was passed as a sauna by the skin in its teeth. Once sat on Tory Street to Whanganui Aotearoa, having sat there since 1995 and closing in 2020. There now stands a behemoth of luxury apartments. As my hand writes, blood from a lesion that I struggle to stop clawing at dribbles pathetically down my knuckles, stinging. The words are like scabs. The metallic air of my blood, my body screaming to the scratched and wounded self, all hover over in the word and the ink that I scratched into the page. I cannot turn away from the body. My body, other bodies, assemblages of bodies. I feel I must write to bleed in their turn. My eyes cannot be the only thing to see. A series about trauma, a series about history of injury, inherited trauma along the matrilineal line. In 1977, Clark, seriously injured in a motorbike accident, spends 2 years recovering with partial sight and facial reconstruction. Her grandmother, Annie Victoria Ryan, likewise scarred by a pick, kangaroo, away from them for years. Clark's mother held the trauma of losing 2 children, the darker thread of sexual violation, interwoven, unfinished business and wounds that remain unhealed. What resists repair remains. When and how violence and care are inextricably bound, reflexively they lie together. Threads, ruptures, pierced and unfolding, wounds persist. Four, nostalgia is haunted by phantasmagoria of the urban marketplace. My act was so scandalous, I have forfeited the right to speak. When the Cruise Club is cast from a liberal idealizing perspective, the sight of real salient material contradictions are lost and are overlooked in favour of a myth of lost utopia. This mythic lost utopia, this cruelly optimistic democracy of desire, haunts us. Where there exist as safety zones for cultivated democracy and camaraderie, existing for purposes that were sexual as well as social and political. Nostalgia is haunted by the phantasmagoria of the urban marketplace. To nothing, to nowhere. I stand very still, quiet. I stand softly, put holes in me, pierce my body, make me full of holes, turn me into knots. I breathe out audibly. The airflow moves with the back of my tongue raised towards my hard palate. Outside, a building is being taken apart, floor by floor. It is broken down, slowly, softly, scraped out from the inside. Who is here? I cannot move, do not want to move. I want to stand softly and listen to my noisy breath, air passing through holes and gaps and knots. Listen to the building being taken apart. In a trance I stand, listening, breathing. As a flower held in a vase that leans to the left, cannot be seen to move, but slowly, slowly opens and comes undone. A flower blooming inwards, through time to come, wilts, dries up, crinkles, and comes to rest and standing softly, listening with its stamen, seeing with its leaves, breathing with its petals, thinking with its proboscis, standing with its stamen. It dies and I watch it. I keep it around to watch it die, slowly, softly, quietly. It is full of holes and does not hide them, and looks back at me as it opens away and makes me hang its corpse. Holes, we're in a trance, this flower and I. I listen, all with the wrong parts. With my skin, with my hair, with my bones, with my ears, with my throat. Put holes in me. I am immobilized in trance, and languages spurt out of my fingertips. I can do nothing. Turn off my brain through the switches in my body. I may never move again. The gesture of standing softly is too alluring. I gesture to myself, alone, quietly. Immobilized, my body is empty, yet full of liquid. I cannot move to feed myself. I wish to eat only the sounds of the building coming apart from its inside, floor by floor. I wish to eat its time. I look at the dead and dried flowers on my wall in a vase. I look at the dying white roses in fetid water in which they rest. I am its interior, it's my anterior. Peace in our stillness, peace in our quiet, peace in our breath, peace in our gaps that dance and move around and through. Now I break the trance. I will, I can, I am. I break the trance. I break the stillness. Now.